Shall we begin?
I've talked about adaptations before, both good and bad. This time I'm going to talk about an anime being adapted to a TV show. And oh boy, they change things. Welcome to the heart of the stories we tell. My name is Rob, and tonight I will be reviewing the live-action Death Note. And let me just start off by saying that I recently did the review of the anime itself, and there were things I said I hoped they changed, and there were things I said I hoped they didn't change. But one of the things I hadn't considered is how storytelling differs when not just you go from animation to live action, but when you go from a Japanese thought process to an American one. And the live action Death Note is very much an American thought process. And the most important thing I learned from all this is I was mispronouncing Ryuk's name. Okay, in all seriousness, I think Netflix did a good job at adapting this. They didn't make it an exact one-for-one change, but I have to say they got the themes down, if anything, better than the original did. Now, having said that, there are things I liked better in the anime and things I liked better in this, but this was very short. Not that it was a short movie, but just that it was only one movie. So I have to take that into consideration too. So, back when I reviewed Death Note, I said I liked it. This one, I'm giving a gold rating to, which is one step better than I gave the anime, although it was really close with the anime of making it gold instead of Electrum. You want to find out why? Let's get into spoiler territory. So once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. So yeah, they Americanized the story, but they kept the basic theme and symbolism the same. The big thing they did was they changed the way the love story works and how the main character actually thinks. And they kind of made it a Romeo and Juliet story. Oh boy, did they ever make it a Romeo and Juliet story. But let's break down the elements, and we'll start with setting. Instead of Japan, we're in Seattle, and that's an important difference because of the way schooling works, because of the way police interact with people, and just in general, it sets the whole idea of this being a new take, because it's in a completely different place. Seattle's a large place. Most of the setting actually is the school, because they keep Light in school for this. He's been in school for the entire movie. So, as we move on from that, let's talk about how they changed the characters. First of all, they changed it by cutting down the cast. In the anime, there were a bunch of police officers, there was Light's whole family, and in this, we really only have a handful of main characters. And of course, the main character, Light, is very different. Although still intelligent, he's not so much bored as he is confused and very, very emotionally distant. And he has problems. And a big part of that problem is the fact that his home life isn't perfect. His school isn't perfect. He isn't as intelligent. He just isn't a perfect character. He's a very flawed character in this. And we'll come back to that. Because his girlfriend is also not some big pop sensation. No, she is a cheerleader, though. But she is the most disturbing, creepy character in this. That's saying a lot since we have someone playing Ryuk who actually could probably just live action Ryuk, for God's sake. Because Light isn't as driven, we need Ryuk and Mai, the girlfriend, in order to kinda cajole him, kind of influence him, very much corrupt him. In fact, I can relate to Light a lot more in this than I could in the anime. Light could have been me in high school. Slightly smarter than average, but not a genius. Definitely not popular, and sometimes getting beat up, and occasionally doing other people's homework for them. That brings us to our antagonist, L, who might actually be the hero of the story, and they did gray him up a little. He's a little darker in this than he is in the anime, and I don't mean the actor's skin color. What I mean is he gets angry easier, and I kind of like that. As a Sherlock Holmes SB, he really very much is a stand-in for that archetype. And although I have a few qualms with the way they introduce him and the whole idea of before the Death Note there would be a reason to have a super secret agent detective, it at least gives it a little more plausibility the way they do it. It makes me feel a little better, and besides, I have to give them something, right? Then we have Elle's dad, and once again, this made me feel more like he was a real cop. In this case, he was an IA detective, which means he investigates other cops. And he wasn't a perfect cop, he wasn't a true believer, but he was still a good cop and doing his best. And adding the tragedy of the wife being killed, Light's mother, added to the entire gravitas of the situation. And again, I know it's an Americanization of the story, but it was a good one. In general, we have Light who wants to be the good guy, we have Mia who doesn't mind being a sociopath, we have the father who's walking a thin line as an IA detective, and we have Elle as a Sherlock Holmes stand-in. And those characterizations are enough for me to understand why this was a good story. But let's talk about the story itself and the plot. The plot is linear and very straightforward. This is Light. Light finds the Death Note. Now, in this particular case, it was dropped by him on purpose because he had the potential to be interesting. And once he has the Death Note, he wants to use it to help people, but all it can do is kill, so he wants to kill bad people. And this sets up the main antagonistic role of the movie. Light wants to kill bad people, Elle wants to stop all murderers and considers Light to be one of the bad guys because of it, and as such we have this conflict. The entire thing can be summed up pretty easily, though, with something we're going to talk about more in a minute with theme. The whole point of the movie is, if you had the power to choose, if you had the ability, would you kill someone? Was there a good reason for it? But let's talk about point of view for a second. This is Light's story, and as such, we only find out things as he does, including a twist that I won't spoil. But okay, theme and symbolism time. Like I said just a minute ago, who has the right to decide who lives and dies? Who has the right to see who the good guy is and who the bad guy is? The very first instance of Light using the Death Note is a great example of this. He sees someone being beat up, he wants to protect her, but how? Well, if he writes the name of the bully in the Death Note, they'll die. And if he does that, doesn't that make him the hero? Wouldn't it be good to stop the bad guy? And this is the kid that already beat him up, and the kid that's already been harassing everyone. I mean, he's not a good person. Personal side note, I was bullied a bit in high school, and I don't want to think about what I would do with the Death Note when I was in high school. But since I've grown out of it, I've seen several of my bullies around town, and most of them grew up. But not all of them. Some of them really did be jerks in high school, be jerks in college, and still be jerks today as adults. So, there's part of me that says, you know what, this kid was such a bad bully, such an asshole. Maybe Light was right. Maybe this one guy goes back to if you ever saw the Jason Todd story play out in the comics, or especially the Red Hood animated movie for Batman. I don't want you to kill all your villains. Just the clown. Just the Joker. He's so bad, he needs to be stopped. And it's so easy to fall into that mindset. The entire idea of, I'm doing good by taking evil out of this world. But there's a question with it in this. Who has the right? And they only touch on the idea of the fact that if Light is caught, he'll be killed by the state a little bit. But there's a certain amount of, is the death penalty any different than murder? Is having the power of a death god enough to justify you being a death god? If you only kill bad people, are you a bad person? Oof, lots of tough choices, lots of things to think about. And you know what? I'm very glad I don't have a Death Note. I wouldn't even want to have to think about what the consequences would be. I wouldn't want to have to deal with it. Now, they changed the rules some, so some of the symbolic moments are a little different, but in general, it's all about Light, and whether or not he's willing to cross the line. Now, to compare this to the anime, in the anime, he crosses the line in, like, episode 2 to kill someone he thinks a cop, and then he kills FBI agents. In this, that doesn't happen. Not because he can't do it, but because, point blank, his girlfriend does it for him. Now, like I said, there's a whole twist, and there's a bunch of things going on, but between Ryuk and Mai, they really pick up the slack of all of the dark things that Light does in the original anime. In the anime, I said they fell down on the job because he kicked the dog so many times in those first handful of episodes that it was really hard to root for him. Because, I mean, realistically, when you watched him, you knew he was willing to kill anyone that got in his way. Now, in this, he tries to go through everything to not. And one of the greatest things is him looking up to try to figure out what Ryuk is, which you just saw a scene of. And you know what? They don't go out of their way to explain it. They don't show all the other death gods. They don't show everything that happens. Overall, I really liked this. It was good. It was thought-provoking. So what about the good, the bad, and the ugly? Well, I'm going to just sum this up very quickly. The good and the bad is the Americanization. They're really taking a story that wasn't meant to be this sort of thing and made it a Romeo and Juliet story. Even though I enjoyed that more, that's going to piss off some hardcore fans. There were some awesome special effects, and beautiful ones, but people are going to complain it's a lot like Final Destination. And the fact that they took some of the darkness out of Light himself and gave it to the other supporting characters means that there's a certain amount of, he almost comes off as the good guy here. And I just want to take a second with the, I'm not sure if this is good or bad, but the amount of sexuality involved in this high school makes me question some things and point blank say, this isn't a YA story, this isn't a story I want to let a freshman in high school see necessarily. But at the same time, it might be more realistic that way. And of course, no review would be complete without having to worry about how people on the internet complain. So I want to talk for just a second about whitewashing. I don't think this qualifies. This is obviously not the same exact story, but an interpretation. And by putting it in America, they made it so most of the characters should be American. And let's be honest, all in all, the anime style doesn't exactly give away what nationality most people are. I very much am of the belief that adaptations should keep concept and theme over exact details, and in this case I think it did. And if you saw my Throwback Thursday where I talked about Death Note to begin with, you'll know that there were a lot of things that kind of bugged me and I thought were stretched out. I think that this could have been 2 movies, or maybe a 2.5-hour movie, but overall, it was good. And I even like the fact that they left it open that there could be a sequel, or you can just read that end scene as the end. All in all, I think this was a solid gold movie, and I stand by that. But those were my thoughts. I'm curious what you had to think, especially if you've seen the anime, or if you've read the manga that I haven't. What do you think about this adaptation? Do you think that it was good? Do you agree with me that the themes were kept even if the specifics weren't? And did you agree that having Light be a little more relatable was a good thing? Well, whether you agreed or disagreed, I'd love for you to like this video, and of course share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, click that subscribe button and enable alerts, because every week I do theory videos on storytelling, and as these shows come out, I do reviews. All of it to try to explore the hows and the whys, because I want to be a writer someday, and as such, I want to explore how we tell these stories and what makes up a story. Or to put it more simply, I like to walk through the heart of the stories we tell. Have a good day, and thanks for watching.